Somewhere out in the Pacific, there's an American island where the rent is $0, the meals are covered, and your only job is counting seabirds. You don't need a visa, and you don't have to renounce your citizenship. And it's just one of more than a dozen islands flying the US flag that almost nobody on the mainland can name. On some of them, locals live in open-air homes that cost less than a used car. But before you pack a duffel bag, you need to know that 5 of these islands will get you arrested, stranded, or poisoned if you try to move there. Let's start with the 10 that actually work. Number 10. Saipan, the island where nobody buys, everybody leases. Saipan is the main island and capital of the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, a chain of volcanic islands sitting closer to Tokyo than to Honolulu, and it runs on a land rule that sounds insane to mainland ears. Under the territory's agreement with the United States, only people of Northern Mariana's descent can actually own land. Everyone else, including Americans from the States, can only lease it, usually for up to 55 years. Now here's why that's secretly great for tiny home living. Because nobody's flipping property to foreign investors, land stays cheap. Long-term leases on small lots go for a fraction of what a parking space costs in San Francisco, and modest concrete homes with ocean views sit at prices that would be a down payment in Denver. And here's how it works in practice. You lease a lot, you build or buy the structure on it, and the home itself is yours, which is why small prefab and container builds have quietly become a thing here. Add visa-free relocation for any American, turquoise lagoons like Managaha, and a dive site called the Grotto that looks computer-generated, and Saipan becomes one of the easiest soft landings in the Pacific. The island wears its history openly too. Rusted Sherman tanks still sit in the shallows off the invasion beaches, and the cliffs on the northern tip mark some of the darkest days of the Pacific War. The catch is isolation. You're roughly 6,000 miles from California, and typhoons are a genuine part of life here. But if Saipan sounds remote, the next island is closer to Miami than Miami is to New York, and you can get there for the price of a coffee. Number 9. Culebra, the island that banned the resorts. Culebra sits about 17 miles off the east coast of Puerto Rico, and the public ferry from the town of Saba costs a little over $2. $2 to reach an island that National Geographic types keep ranking among the best beaches on the planet. Flamenco Beach is a horseshoe of white sand and glassy water with 2 rusted American tanks slowly dissolving in the surf, leftovers from the decades when the Navy used the island for target practice. Roughly 1,800 people live here, and local zoning has fought off big resort chains for years, which means no high-rises, no casinos, and no cruise ship crowds. What you find instead are small wooden casitas, converted containers, and off-grid cabins tucked into the hills, many built by mainlanders who realized their federal benefits, their social security, and their US bank accounts all work exactly the same here. And when flamenco somehow feels crowded, locals take a small boat to Culebrita, an uninhabited islet next door with a ruined Spanish lighthouse and tidal pools warm enough to soak in. Sea turtles graze the seagrass beds like cattle. Groceries are pricier because everything arrives by boat, and the power grid has moods. But your rent can drop to a few $100s and your commute becomes a golf cart. Still, Culebra looks expensive next to our next stop, an island where entire fixer-upper houses have sold for less than a new pickup truck. Number 8. St. Croix, the Caribbean's clearance rack. St. Croix is the biggest of the U.S. Virgin Islands and somehow the one everybody forgets, because St. Thomas gets the cruise ships and St. John gets the honeymooners. That neglect is your opportunity. After the 2017 hurricanes tore through the territory, St. Croix filled up with damaged properties selling at prices that make mainland buyers do a double take, and a small wave of settlers started rebuilding them into container homes and tiny cottages outside the old Danish towns of Christiansted and Frederiksted. And then there's the money angle. The Virgin Islands run their own territorial tax system, and their economic development program can cut income tax by up to 90% for qualifying residents and businesses. Americans fly in without a passport on what count as domestic flights, plug into U.S. banks, U.S. mail, U.S. everything, and live surrounded by colonial arches, sugar mill ruins, and some of the best diving walls in the Caribbean. This is also, technically, where America begins. Point Udall, on the eastern tip of St. Croix, is the easternmost point of the United States, and just offshore sits Buck Island Reef, a national monument with an underwater snorkeling trail. Two working rum distilleries keep the island's oldest industry alive, which tells you something about the pace of life here. The trade-off is real. Infrastructure limps, and hurricane season is not a rumor. But if you want cheap Caribbean land under a US flag, this is the isle to shop in. Our next island takes cheap even further because it's almost completely empty. Number 7. Tinian, the island with more history than people. Tinian sits 3 miles across a channel from Saipan, and around 2,000 people live on an island that once held tens of thousands. During World War II, this little slab of coral hosted the busiest airfield on Earth, and the pits where the atomic bombs were loaded onto the Enola Gay are still there, covered in glass, in the middle of a jungle-swallowed runway complex called North Field. Today, about 2/3 of the island is leased to the US military, which means the civilian part is tiny, quiet, and absurdly affordable. Cattle wander across empty boulevards that were graded for a city that never came. In the single village of San Jose, ancient latte stone pillars at the House of Taga stand next to a massive abandoned casino resort that went bankrupt and now sits empty, a monument to an economy that boomed and vanished. Land leases here run even cheaper than Saipan. Small homes sit vacant waiting for anyone patient enough to fix them, and your neighbors will know your name by day 3 whether you like it or not. Living on Tinian is basically living inside a history documentary with a beach attached. But the trade for that silence is that everything, from doctors to hardware stores, involves a boat or a tiny plane. Our next island also got abandoned by the military, except when the Navy left, it accidentally created one of the cheapest tropical land markets in America. Number 6. Vieques, where the Navy's exit became your entrance. For about 60 years, the US Navy used most of Vieques, a 21-mile island off Puerto Rico, as a bombing range. After years of protests, the military finally pulled out in 2003, and something strange happened. Huge stretches became a wildlife refuge, thousands of wild horses took over the roads, and the land that stayed private became some of the cheapest oceanfront real estate under the American flag. Settlers snapped up lots and dropped tiny homes, yurts, and solar cabins on them because the island still has loose building patterns and no resort wall blocking the coast. And the natural payoff is ridiculous. Mosquito Bay on the south shore is officially the brightest bioluminescent bay in the world, water that glows electric blue when you drag your hand through it at night. Down in the little waterfront strip of Esperanza, dinner means a food truck and a sunset over the Malecon, and the horses will absolutely walk into your yard and eat your garden, which locals treat less like a problem and more like weather. Power outages are common, the hospital situation is thin, and unexploded ordnance still keeps parts of the old range fenced off. But thousands of Americans have already traded a mortgage for a hammock here. Now everything so far has been cheap. The next place on this list is where money almost stops mattering entirely. Number 5. Tutuila, the island where rent basically doesn't exist. Tutuila is the main island of American Samoa, and it runs on a system most Americans have never encountered. Around 90% of the land is communally owned by extended families and administered by chiefs called matai, which means there is no real estate market to price you out of. People live on family land in villages, often in fails, traditional open-sided homes with wooden posts and a roof, which are essentially the original tiny homes, engineered for ocean breezes centuries before Instagram discovered minimalism. Now, one honest caveat. American Samoa runs its own immigration, separately from the rest of the United States, so a mainlander who wants to stay long-term needs a local permit and usually a sponsor, like an employer or a host family. You can't buy land unless you're at least half Samoan by ancestry either. But for those who do get taken in, rooms and small homes rent for a fraction of mainland prices, while tuna boats unload in Pago Pago Harbor beneath jungle cliffs. The deeper truth is that daily life costs collapse because the culture isn't built on rent extraction. Food comes from plantations and reefs, and the community absorbs you or it doesn't. Now, Tutuila is the busy island. Its little sister is where this list starts getting unbelievable. Number 4. Ofu, the national park you can sleep inside. Ofu is a speck in the Manua group of American Samoa, home to roughly 100 people and a beach that photographers argue is the single best in the Pacific. A ribbon of blinding sand, a coral lagoon, and jagged green peaks stacked behind it like a movie backdrop. Most of the island falls inside the National Park of American Samoa, the only U.S. national park south of the equator, and the park runs a homestay program almost nobody outside the islands knows about. Visitors live with local families, sleeping in village homes and fails, eating breadfruit and fresh fish, for a small daily amount that mostly just covers your food. There are no resorts and no restaurants here, just one tiny family-run lodge beside the grass airstrip, and often the only way in is a weekly flight on a plane the size of a minivan. The lagoon itself is quietly famous in the science world because its corals survive water temperatures that kill reefs elsewhere. So marine biologists fly across the planet to study a beach that 100 villagers get to themselves every morning. People who come for a week have stayed for months because when your housing is a mat, a mosquito net, and the sound of the reef, your cost of living rounds down to almost nothing. But even Ofu isn't the cheapest lease in America. For that, we go back to the Marianas. Number 3, Rota, the friendliest bargain in the Pacific. Rota is the forgotten third island of the Northern Marianas, home to fewer than 2,000 people, and locals call it the friendliest island for a reason. Drivers wave at every car they pass because they genuinely know every car they pass. Tourism collapsed here decades ago when the flights got cut, and the result is a time capsule. Empty hotels, a swimming hole carved into the reef that fills with sapphire water at high tide, and ancient latte stone quarries where the Chamorro people carved massive pillars 1,000 years ago. Because demand evaporated, long-term land leases on Rota are among the cheapest anywhere under the U.S. flag, and small homes sit at prices that would embarrass a mainland storage unit. Deer outnumber problems here. On the eastern cliffs, a seabird sanctuary lookout puts thousands of boobies and terns wheeling below your feet. Antaga Beach gives you a private staircase of limestone straight into water so clear the boats look like they're floating on air. The trade-off is that opportunity is thin, jobs are scarce, so this works for remote workers, retirees, and anyone whose income doesn't care about geography. Quick pause. If islands like this are why you clicked, hit subscribe, because I dig up overlooked corners of the map every single week. And if you think Rota sounds off-grid, the next island literally built its own power plant out of sunshine. Number 2, Ta'u, the solar island at the edge of America. Ta'u is the easternmost inhabited island of American Samoa, which makes it very nearly the last inhabited place in the entire American system before open ocean. About 800 people live beneath Rota Mountain, whose sea cliffs are among the tallest on Earth, and this is the island where anthropologist Margaret Mead did the fieldwork that made her famous in the 1920s. For most of its history, Ta'u ran on rationed diesel shipped in by barge. Then in 2016, engineers installed a solar microgrid with over 5,000 panels and Tesla battery packs, and the island now runs almost entirely on sunlight, replacing roughly 100,000 gallons of diesel a year that used to arrive by barge across open ocean. When cyclones roll through, and they do, the panels are built to fold down and ride out winds that would flatten a mainland solar farm. Same communal land system as Tutuila, same village homestay culture as Ofu, which means an outsider willing to embed with a family can live here on pocket change, in a place without a single hotel or chain store, under a night sky with zero light pollution. It might be the most extreme lifestyle reset available on a U.S. passport, and yet it's still not free. There is exactly one American island where the answer to "what's my rent" is genuinely nothing, and that's our number one. Number 1. Palmyra Atoll, the island that pays your way. 1,000 miles south of Hawaii sits Palmyra Atoll, a ring of 50 islets, palm forests, and a lagoon so untouched that sharks patrol the shallows like it's still the year 1500. It's a U.S. territory with zero permanent residents. During World War II, the Navy carved an airstrip into it and stationed thousands of men here, and for decades afterward, the atoll was privately owned by a single Honolulu family until the Nature Conservancy bought it in 2000 to protect it forever. Today, the Conservancy and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service run a small research station under one of the last untouched coastal rainforests in the Pacific, and the handful of people living there at any time, usually between 4 and 20, are staff, scientists, and volunteer caretakers. And here is the part that sounds made up. Those positions come with housing and meals covered. You live in simple cabins under the coconut palms, you work on invasive species removal, seabird counts, and coral research, and your cost of living is $0. No rent, no groceries, no commute, just manta rays in the lagoon and a supply flight every few weeks. Obviously, this isn't a place you move to on a whim. You apply, you get selected, and you accept true isolation, with no stores, no cell towers, and a doctor who is very far away. But Palmyra is the only place in the American system where an ordinary citizen can live in paradise completely free, legally, today. And that's exactly where this video takes a dark turn, because the other American islands out there will not house you. Some of them might kill you. Here are the 5 American territories to avoid, starting with the one guarded by the military. Number 5 to avoid: Wake Island. Wake is a V-shaped atoll between Hawaii and Guam that hosted one of the most brutal battles of World War II, and today it's an active U.S. Air Force installation. There is no civilian access, period. The runway serves as an emergency landing strip for aircraft crossing the Pacific. Unexploded ordnance still turns up in the coral, and showing up uninvited means being detained on arrival. Beautiful lagoon. Permanent number 4 to avoid: Howland Island. This flat sliver of sand and scrub is famous for one thing. Amelia Earhart was trying to land here in 1937 when she vanished, and the crumbling day beacon on its shore still carries her name. Howland has no fresh water, no shade worth mentioning, no anchorage, and it's a protected wildlife refuge that's illegal to enter without a federal permit. The seabirds own it now, and honestly, they earned it. Number 3 to avoid: Kingman Reef. Calling Kingman a territory is generous because most of it is underwater. At high tide, the land amounts to a strip of bare coral rubble a few feet above the waves, with no soil, no plants, and no water. It's American, it's real, it appears on official lists, and building even the tiniest tiny home here would require the home to be a boat. Number 2 to avoid: Navassa Island. Navassa sits between Jamaica and Haiti, and it's the only U.S. territory another country actively claims, because Haiti has disputed American ownership since the 1800s. The island is a slab of jagged rock ringed by sheer cliffs with no beach and no landing site, and its history includes a deadly 1889 uprising by guano miners worked in brutal conditions. Today, it's a wildlife refuge, entry is prohibited, and Haitian fishermen are basically the only humans who ever go near it. And number 1 to avoid: Johnston Atoll. This one isn't just off-limits, it's contaminated. For decades, Johnston served as America's dumping ground for its worst materials. Nuclear tests were launched from here in 1962, and one failed missile scattered plutonium across the island. Later, it stored leaking barrels of Agent Orange, and then hosted the incinerator that burned a huge share of the U.S. chemical weapons stockpile. The cleanup crews left, the seabirds moved back in, and no sane person should follow them. So that's the real map of American paradise. 10 islands where a U.S. passport, a small budget, and a tolerance for slow ferries can buy you a life most people assume requires renouncing citizenship, and 5 where the flag flies over places no one should ever call home. And notice the pattern. Every affordable island on this list stayed affordable for the same reason, because something blocked the speculators. A land covenant, a communal system, a military lease, a collapsed airline route. The places that kept outside money out are the only places regular people can still afford to move in. From $2 ferries in Puerto Rico to free room and board on Palmyra, the American map is bigger and stranger than 50 states. I hunt down the world's overlooked corners every week, so subscribe and I'll meet you at the next hidden place. And tell me in the comments, which of these 10 could you actually see yourself living on?